Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alicia, and I'm a member of the Client Success team. So this webinar is recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel tomorrow, and you guys will also receive a follow-up email of the recording. At the end of the webinar, you'll be given an option to fill out our survey. We'd be super grateful if you could fill this out for us, as it helps us to improve our webinar series. So just to let you all know, before we begin, all of the information given in this webinar is copyright of Arthur Online, but you can have a quick read through this before we move on. Okay, so the idea of today's session is to get a better understanding of applicants and viewings in Arthur. First, we're going to have a look at applicants, what they are and how they are created in the system and the significance of them. We will then go into having a look at creating viewings and the information that can be held within them. Again, like I said, there will also be a chance at the end of the webinar to ask any questions on anything you haven't understood, I haven't covered, or needs further clarification. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have a look at is applicants. An applicant is essentially a contact with details about themselves in your system. So there are several different ways an applicant can get into the system. We're just going to have a look at that now. Okay, so the first way an applicant can get into the system is through manually adding them. To do this, you can either add them from the quick add function up here on the left. Everything you kind of need to add quickly can be added from this bit here, or you can go into the applicant section itself and add an applicant from here. So this next screen allows you to add as much or as little information about a specific individual. You can see all the sort of different fields available here for you to be able to add information on a specific person. If there isn't a field in this section here, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you have the option to add any additional notes on that person in the Manager Notes section. So that's kind of the first way that you can add an applicant. The next way that you can add an applicant is through the web form. Now, there are two kind of different versions of the same form. So let me just show you my applicant form. So this is the link to my form, but if you are on professional or enterprise, you will have access to this basic form. Okay, so this version that you can see here will allow you to create a completely new person in the system. Now, this link up here would have to be sent to the tenant outside of Arthur, as none of their contact details exist in the system yet. So essentially all they would do, they would go through, fill out anything with a little asterisk next to it, which is mandatory. Scroll to the bottom, there's a disclaimer that they can have a read through here, and then they would save and submit. Once they hit save and submit, this will then create that person in your Arthur account. So that's the first version of the form. The second version of the form allows a contact to update the details that you already have about them in the system. So the link would change slightly here. It would be this, and it will bring them to this page here. So what they will need to do is they will need to use the email address you have input into the system for them in here. Once they've done that, they'll be sent a reference which is automatically generated to the email address, and they will then need to put the reference into the box, which will then allow them to access the form and update any of their details. Now, any information, so if I just bring you back to this form here so you can see what it looks like. Any information that has been completed in the form will feed into the system and be stored against their contact. And any documents, so any information they fill in, will be stored here. If you click on the eye icon and then edit applicant, will be stored in here and accessible to you at all times. And any documents they might upload to the form will be accessible here in personal information, and they'll be held within the documents and images. It's worth remembering that the form can only be submitted once. So if there are pieces of information that have been incorrectly filled out or are missing, you will need to collect that information and update it within this edit applicants section yourself, or upload the document to this bit here. The other way, I guess, that you could also do it is you could contact us, have us wipe the application from the back end so that individual can fill it in again. Another really useful thing about the form too is that you are able to have a bespoke version built for yourself, which allows you to collect more specific data, remove sections of the form that you don't need, and have new sections put in. Okay, so that's the second way an applicant can be created in the system. The third way an applicant can be created in the system is through marketing portals. Now, when an inquiry comes through from Facebook, Rightmove, Zoopla, StuRents, an applicant will be created for that individual with the basic information that they have provided, and an inquired viewing will also be created. Now, this will show on your dashboard here. So you will have new applicants today, and new inquiries for any viewings. So this is the only way, or this is one way in which both applicant and viewing are created at the same time. And the final way an applicant can be created in the system is if you have integrated your website with Arthur, and individuals can submit information through your website, which feeds directly into the system here. But you would need your developer to look into setting this up for you. Okay, so if I bring you back to the main applicant screen here, there are a couple of things kind of to note on this main applicant screen that you can use to help filter individuals. So the source here is automatically populated. You can't add to this, you can't change this, but it will populate if an applicant has come through a marketing portal or from your website, and will show which one, like which portal they have come through. Further along here, you can also see the status. So the default statuses, which are accessible across all packages, are active, inactive, and tenant. So active is when an applicant is actively searching for somewhere to live. Inactive is that they are no longer looking, and tenant is once you have created a tenancy for that individual. You are able to manually change the status of the applicants too. So if you click on the drop-down arrow here, and update status, you can change the status of the individual here. If you are an enterprise client, you are able to add more statuses to the three that are already provided, which can help you sort of further filter. To be able to do that, you'd need to click on more up here and then preferences, and then you can add more applicant statuses here by giving it a name, a color, and then you can set it as a default incoming status if you want to. Okay, so from this screen as well, you can also see that you are able to run a credit check on applicants. So what you'll need to do is click on this, create credit report, and fill in the information that it asks for here. So this will produce an immediate credit report on that applicant, helping you gauge if this individual will be able to fulfill their rental commitments. It looks something like this once it's produced and comes back to you. Okay, so credit checks can be bought in bulk from the store, which works out cheaper than buying them individually, or they can be purchased at the point of creating the credit check. Once you've filled all of this information in, you will then continue and it will ask you to confirm, and it will just charge you for one credit check. Okay, so now we know what applicants are and how they are created. We're going to have a look at viewings. So once an applicant has been added to the system, the natural progression is to then schedule a viewing with them. As with applicants, viewings can be added in one of several places. Again, the first is manually through either the quick add function up here, and add viewing, or through the viewing section itself, viewing, and then add viewing. Both of these options will lead you to exactly the same page here. From here, you will need to add the unit the applicant is viewing. So if I just pick this address, and then you will need to add the applicant to this. So if you've already created the applicant in the system, you're going to add an existing applicant. If you haven't, you'll need to add a completely new person. So I'm just going to add a new person to this. Okay, so the status is the next thing that you need to have a look at. And at this point, it would be confirmed as this has been agreed between yourselves and the applicant. You can then set the date and the time. So this information here is required, but you can click on the calendar to schedule a date and a time. The duration is optional. If you don't know what that is, you can leave it blank or just put in a rough estimate. Okay, you then have the offer and the proposed move-in date. Now, this kind of information can be left empty at the time of creating the viewing, but it can be updated once you have this information, as you may not have already agreed on these kind of details. Next, you would assign the team members. So this would be the person who's going to carry out the viewing itself. You can get rid of the person who's automatically populated and put in whoever is taking the viewing. You then have the source. So this is where the viewing came from. You are able to add your own to this list by clicking add source here. If it's already in this list, you can just select it and that will populate. And lastly, any notes you need about the viewing itself. Okay. So below here are some of the automated events I have related to this viewing. So these can be set up in the automation section of your account. Essentially, you can tick or untick whatever you want to have sent to each party. You also have to make sure, if you're sending a confirmation SMS to a viewer, that you have their mobile number. If you're sending a message, which is always an email in the system, you need to make sure that you've got an email address for them. I've just created an applicant, a shell of Josh. I have no information, so none of these things will run. You just have to obviously make sure that you have that in the system before. And then you've also got a notification to the assigned property manager. Once you hit submit, this will then create the viewing. So you're then directed to the viewing itself. So you can see all the information that we've just put in here. If you need to make any changes to the viewing, you should do it from within the edit viewing section. So within here. So you can change, the date and time. You can change any of the information that they may have given you. If you're changing the date and time, you will also want to email the current occupants of that place, if there is anyone living there, or the viewer, the applicant themselves. Again, you can add additional actions to these events to be able to, notify Alex to let him know that the viewing has changed. Just make sure that once you've made any changes, you tick the correct boxes to notify the respective parties and then hit submit. Okay. Another really important thing that I would recommend you do is, if you need to contact the applicant about the viewing specifically, keep that correspondence within the viewing itself, so it makes it easier for you to come back to and find in the future. So I would send messages from here, from within the viewing itself. All of that sort of correspondence about the viewing is then held within the viewing itself, as opposed to just being sort of a standalone message sent from within the messages section, which you cannot then go back and link to this viewing itself. Okay, so that's kind of the first way of creating a viewing. The second way a viewing can be created in the system is if, again, it comes through a portal. Now, I can't demonstrate that for you, but if you have an inquiry come through a portal, as I spoke about before, both the applicant and the viewing are created at the same time. And the last way a viewing can be created is if you've, again, integrated with your website and Arthur, and have a function where applicants can schedule a viewing. So this works in the same way as portals do. An important thing to kind of remember or like not to worry about is once these applicants and viewings are created in the system, if Joe Daniels, for example, created or requested 2 viewings at different properties, there would only be 1 Joe Daniels as an applicant in the system, but 2 viewings for that person. Okay, so bringing it back to the main viewing screen here, you can see that we have, the viewing screen. You can see that we will have the name of the applicant and the unit that they are viewing. We'd be able to see if there were any additional notes on this person, and the date and time are clearly displayed, and we can see who's been assigned to carry this viewing out. So all of the important information that you need is visible at a glance. Once the viewing has taken place, you can then update the status to reflect what was happened. To do that, you just click on the drop down arrow here and update the status of the viewing to reflect, the outcome. Again, your automation can be set up to kind of send off emails, notifications, text messages, whatever you need in relation to the outcome of that as well. So that has essentially covered applicants and viewings. Thank you all for attending. We now have a little bit of time left to answer any questions that you might have. So Becky has asked, when an applicant comes in from Zoopla, the viewing request comes in as confirmed, which is confusing. Can I add a requested status to differentiate which viewings I'll have booked? I can certainly suggest that to the dev team. Yeah, Becky. How do you send a link for the application? So it depends on which link you want to send. Let me just bring you back to my form. So as I was saying before, you have 2 sort of variations of the applicant form itself. If you're sending this form, so this link, this will allow the applicant to fill out the form and it will create them as a completely new person in the system. So this link would be used if you don't have any of their details in Arthur at all. You would then, if you're using this version of the form, so this URL here allows individuals or allows the applicant to update the basic data that you already have in the system. So you might already have their first and last name and their email address. You can automate this into sort of your onboarding tenancy process through your automated events. Hi, is there any way that you can synchronize the viewing appointment on an iPhone calendar? You might be able to use Zapier to do that, although I have never tested, so I'm not too sure. Would have to check and get back to you on that one. Where do you find the web links to the applicant form? So the web link can be found. It's not in your account itself. Everyone has the same link, so it would be this. And you would then just need to put in your slug. My slug is Alicia, and you can find your slug here in your account. It's right here. That's your slug. How do you set up a link with Zoopla so that applicants' info filters through Arthur? I'm not sure I understand that question. Oh, okay. Sorry. No, I do understand. So if you link Zoopla, what you'll need to do to connect Zoopla is come here to the Arthur store. You've got marketing channels and then Zoopla. So you'll need to subscribe to the service. What you then need to do is you need to contact Zoopla to let them know that you want to allow the feed from Arthur or to Arthur. And what happens then if you have any inquiries through this portal, they will come through as the applicant will be created in this applicant section, and the associated viewing again will be created in the viewing section, and you'll be able to see any sort of new inquiries and any new applicants that have come through on your dashboard there. Peter's asked, letting the applicant filling out the form themselves. How do we generate the web link to send the applicant to fill out again? So again, like I was saying before, if you need to send them that link, the first, let's call it version 1, this one here, without this, is the one that you would have to send out externally, as that information doesn't exist. Version 2, which was the one that I've just got sort of back from, that one can be automated into your processes, but you would have to kind of build that, and depending on when you want to send that is where you would embed that link into your form. Where do you find the web links? Again, it's just this applicant.arthur.online.co.uk. You can find it in the knowledge base as well. You just need to make sure that you're putting in your company slug. If you have a Switch account as well, it's really important to make sure that you're sending the right link with the correct slug, so that when an applicant fills that form out, their information is being populated or pulls into the correct account. The Zoopla subscription does the Zoopla subscription give you as many listings as you want? Yep, you can list as many units on Zoopla as you like. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we've got. There's nothing new coming in. So I will end it here, but I hope everyone has a fantastic Christmas and a lovely new year. Bye, guys.